since the beginning. Pokemon evolution lines has a limit of 3 stages, but with the introduction of Mega Evolution in Generation 6, this technically allowed some evolution lines to unlock a 4th stage. But they weren't the only Pokemon to be given Mega Evolutions. Plenty of single and 2-stage evolution lines also obtained a Mega Evolution. And with Legend ZA about to give us another great bundle of Mega Pokemon, it got me thinking, should non-legendary Pokemon that aren't a part of a 3-stage evolution line even be given Megas rather than just a new extension to their pre-existing evolution line? To start with this examination, we must first look at the underlying differences between a Mega Evolution and a regular evolution. A Mega Evolution is temporary, whereas regular evolutions are permanent. In battle, this means that if you so choose to, can use the non-Mega version of the Pokemon first before Mega Evolving it later. An instance of waiting before Mega Evolving is Mega Sharpedo, who would stall a turn with Protect to raise its speed stat with the speed boost ability. Had Mega Sharpedo been a standard evolution, there wouldn't be the chance for it to gain these extra benefits. Another difference between standard and Mega Evolutions is the amount of stats gained from the evolution. A Mega Evolution will always result in an increase of 100 towards the Pokemon's base stat total, with none of those stats boosted towards HP, whereas a standard evolution can vary between a tiny increase and a very large increase. There also exists a no stat change evolution and a stat loss evolution, but for the most part, you will gain stats upon evolving. It's just unknown how much you will get. Next, let's look at abilities. Mega Pokemon are locked into having one designated ability, whereas standard evolutions can have one or more abilities that can allow you to fight in different styles. For example, Excadrill is a Pokemon that is expected to get a Mega Form, while already being able to fight competitively with different abilities, such as Sand Rush and Mold Breaker. Another notable difference between Megas and Standard Evolution is the items they can wield. Mega Pokemon are forced to hold their respective Mega Stone so that they can undergo Mega Evolution, whereas Standard Evolutions has no restrictions on the item they can hold, which then can enhance their ability to perform in battle, whether offensively, defensively, or as support, alongside the stats they gain from evolution as well. The final difference between Mega and Standard Evolution is their limit per team. A Mega Evolution can only occur once per battle, even if the entire team is wielding a Mega Stone. As for Standard Evolution, there is no limit, so you can, if you so choose to, have an entire team of fully evolved or Stage 3 Pokemon. And yeah, that basically covers up all the major differences between a Mega and Standard Pokemon evolution. So now I want to look at the landscape of how Pokemon battles would have looked like if these single and second stage Mega Evolution mons was an extension of their pre-existing lines and can be used freely like standard evolutions. Now of course, if Game Freak were to make this change right now, it would cause severe differences to the current metagame of both Ubers and OU, as some of these Megas were absolute beasts back in Generation 6 and 7, such as Lucario, Kangaskhan, and Mawile. And even though another 2 generations of power creep has stepped in, if these Pokemons had access to items and could be utilized in the same team, it would probably be destructive to the game. Just imagine if Mega Mawile had Choice Band, Mega Lucario with Weakness Policy, and Mega Kangaskhan with Choice Scarf. Now imagine if they had access to Terrestrialization and were on the same team. Not only would they themselves be an issue with their high stats, great abilities, and access to items, but some of their pre-evolution would also shift the game if they had access to Eviolite now that they have another evolution. Just for example, imagine if the following Pokemon gained access to Eviolite due to them having a higher form rather than a Mega. Slowbro, Steelix, and Gyarados. All of these will become defensive demons if they had access to Eviolite. But these are just extreme examples. What about the other ones? Would these Megas really break the entirety of the metagame if they had free use? Probably not. We're at a point now in Pokemon where some of the standard Pokemon, mostly Paradox Pokemon, could rival those of Mega Evolutions. For example, Mega Houndoom basically rivals Chi-Yu, having slightly better stats but a worse ability. Mega Manectric holds similar stats to Sandy Shocks and Kilowattrel. Mega Banette is most likely worse than Fluttermane. Mega Heracross is worse than Slitherwing if it has Photosynthesis activated. Iron Bundle is better than Mega Glalie, as well as being a better offensive choice than Mega Sharpedo. Iron Valiant can match fairly with Mega Lopunny. Gouging Fire is easily a better Dragon Pokemon than Mega Altaria, and its bulk is better than that of Mega Camerupt. without having to suffer from severe low speed. Dunsparce might even be a better normal type than Mega Audino. Iron Boulder with Quark Drive active can be as lethal as Mega Aerodactyl. And defensively, Iron Hands can be as good as Mega Sableye and Mega Slowbro. But of course, that's all if those mentioned Megas don't have access to items. If they did, then it might get a bit chaotic. But if they were slightly weaker, I don't think there would be any problems at all. So how should Game Freak go about making Mega Pokemon in the future so that some of them don't get overlooked easily? My suggestion is implementing a 600 rule, where if a Pokemon who isn't a legendary or 3rd stage evolution were to receive an increase of 100 base stats and that stat total fails to exceed 600, then that Pokemon isn't given a Mega. Rather, they will receive a traditional evolution and be given a Mega evolution some other time. As for why 600 would be the benchmark, it's because this is where all the Pokemon that are labeled as being strong resides in, such as Mythicals, Legendaries, Alternate Forms, Pseudo-Legendaries, and Slacking. 600 is also the most common stat total across all Pokemon, being used 38 times across all regular and regional form Pokemon. For those wondering, 500 is the next most common stat total, having 35 appearances. Back to the main point, unlike Megas, they don't have a restriction on how many you can bring to one team. So if you so desire to, can bring an entire team of pseudo-legendary. And since Megas are a once in a battle options, I believe they should be stronger than some of these Pokemons in their base form. If they thought of this unspoken rule to begin with, then Mega Lucario, Mega Steelix, Mega Aerodactyl, and Mega Gyarados will still remain if they so choose to, or be given another stage despite already passing a base stat total of 500, like Porygon 2 and Duraludon, while everyone else below it will get scrapped for later, to allow their potential as a Pokemon to be fully utilized. For example, let's take Sharpedo, a 2nd stage water-type Pokemon with 460 base stats, and let's compare it to Seadra, a 2nd stage water-type Pokemon with 440 base stats. Sharpedo, as we all know, got a Mega Evolution that resulted in an increase of 100 stats instead of a 3rd stage evolution. As for Seadra, it got a 3rd stage evolution, which coincidentally was also a 100 point increase instead of a Mega Evolution. The difference between these two Pokemon now is that Sharpedo as a Pokemon has reached its peak potential in terms of stats, but with Kingdra, despite giving the same stat increase as Sharpedo and holding a relatively similar stat total, it still has the opportunity to be given a Mega Evolution, and holds a much greater chance at being a useful Mega at that. Also remember that traditional evolutions don't have a set value of stat increase like Megas. They could be more or less than 100. For example, let's compare Electabuzz and Kangaskhan. Both of these Pokemon were introduced in Generation 1 and has a stat value of 490. Kangaskhan got possibly the strongest Mega Evolution of all time with Mega Kangaskhan, while Electabuzz got a regular evolution with a 50 stat increase to Electivire in Generation 4, which now allows it to have a chance of becoming a Mega later on and reaching a stat total of 640. Imagine if Kangaskhan followed the same path, having Mega Kangaskhan as an evolution and allowing for a new Mega to come some other time. And even if you think that Mega Kangaskhan having access to items with a stat total of 540 would still be broken, just remember the stat increases from evolution doesn't exactly have to be 50. It can be a 20 point increase like Porygon 2 to Porygon Z, or even a no stat increase like Scyther to Scizor. If it followed what Porygon 2 did with just a small stat increase, it definitely wouldn't be as menacing as we know it is. And even if Parental Bond still causes problems, you can simply just ban the ability in OU or lower tiers, similar to how Sandvale was banned in Generation 3 and 4 that caused Cacturne to be unusable. Now if these modifications were made to all Megas without a complete evolution line, they would allow for them to become naturally good options and have their Mega forms, if they were to get one, actually be something that could leave a huge impact in battle. Let us just assume that all the Megas I previously mentioned gained a 50 stat increase instead of 100, and for simplicity reasons, let us just assume those stats gained are just half of what they were given as a Mega. Houndooms with these adjusted stats will have stats similar to Volcarona, making it a good Pokemon, but nothing that would be viewed as excessively powerful compared to everyone else. Manectric will work similarly to how Jolteon is used. Banette would be similar to Nidoking, with more attack but worse everywhere else. It still wouldn't be viewed as a good Pokemon. So a Mega Evolution coming after this would actually help out this Pokemon's reputation a lot. Heracross is basically a Buzzwole with a more evenly split defensive stats. Glalie is one of the worst megas, so it would still be a bad Pokemon with just a 50 stat increase. But if you stacked it up with another 100 afterwards, then who knows, perhaps it can actually do something more than just setting up spikes and using a refrigerated explosion. Sharpedo would be similar to Infernape, having high offensive stats but lacking defensively. Lopunny would practically be a worse version of Cinderace. Altaria is still a rather bad Pokemon, with his stats looking similar to that of Kingdra, who with a Mega Evolution can become something of good use. Camerupt would have stats similar to that of Hatterene. Audino might have a chance of being somewhat usable as a Mega had it had another stage. In fact, they could have possibly gave this Pokemon 2 more stages before a Mega Evolution. Aerodactyl, as I said prior, is basically fast and agile like Iron Boulder. Sableye could have actually gotten some usages outside of purely stalling if it had additional stats, and Slowbro would see more usages having stats similar to that of Gliscopod. Another reason for why these Pokemon should gain another stage prior to Mega is because it would allow for them to get one last chance at increasing their HP stat. Some Megas would have done much better had some of their stats went towards their HP stats, such as Altaria, Audino, and most other Megas whose HP stat value was at 70 or lower. And it's not like Game Freak stopped giving Pokemon new evolutions. Ursaring is a Generation 2 Pokemon with a stat total of 500, the exact same value as Houndoom, and instead of getting a Mega, it got a standard evolution with an exactly 50 stat point increase, which puts it in range of being a respectable Pokemon but nothing ban-worthy. And most of its stats increase went towards its HP stats, so if it were to be given a Mega in the future, it would most likely be able to compete against all of them. The reason behind why I made this video is because Legend Z8 is going to be giving us new Megas. One of these Megas is Mega Hawlucha. Hawlucha is a Pokemon I really like, though be it not the strongest, and competitively, the only viable strategy is to have it combine Acrobatics with Unburden, something that it won't be able to do as a Mega, since it will have to hold a Hawluchite, which then, assuming it's not getting a game-breaking ability, will have to rely purely on its stats to compete with the rest. And when you look at the entire roster of Mega Pokemon, old and new, I don't see how Hawlucha has any chance of doing anything better than any other Megas, such as Mega Blaziken, which basically means that it just might be the end of the road for Hawlucha and all other Megas that fail to make or will fail to make an impact with the respective Megas. Because take a look at this stat. According to Smogon, 16 out of 25 Mega Pokemon that have either 3 stages or are a legendary Pokemon managed to hit a rating of OU or higher during the X and Y era. And for those who don't know, getting a rating of OU basically certifies you as being a good Pokemon. As for Pokemon with 1 or 2 stages in their evolution line, only 11 out of 23 Megas were able to hit this rating, showing that complete evolution lines find more success than incomplete ones. If we remove the 6 legendaries from the count, as they just seem unfair to add, they go from 64% OU rating to only 53% OU rating, not far off from the incomplete lines. But then we get to the Sun and Moon era, giving us more Pokemon, including Ultra Beast and the Guardian Deities, alongside an adjustment to how Mega Pokemon speeds are calculated. This causes 15 out of 25 complete lines to hit an OU rating or higher, whereas only 8 out of 23 incomplete lines were able to hit this tier. Without legendaries, it drops to 10 out of 19, the same as it was in X and Y. And now we see a decently sized gap between these two groups. This disparity not only shows us that Megas from a full evolution lines perform on average better than those who aren't, but they also age better when competing with the likes of Power Creep. Let's briefly look at the NU tier. This tier stands for Never Used, so if you're in it, it means you stink. No 3-stage evolution line during X and Y or Sun and Moon ever hit this tier. But for the incomplete lines, Audino was in it for X and Y, with Glalie and Abomasnow also being pulled into this tier in the Sun and Moon era. This could have been avoided had these Pokemon simply just had another evolution stage prior to getting a Mega, as we know Game Freak are very capable of doing so. In Generation 4, they gave us so many evolutions to pre-existing Pokemon who are just a Mega evolution away from being relevant again, such as Mamoswine and Togekiss. And they still give evolutions in modern day Pokemon as well, such as Archaludon and Hydrapple. So I don't see why they can't just continue with that. And the last thing I have to say about this whole Mega ordeal is that some of their selections at who receives a Mega is just awful. It's announced that Dragalge and Pyroar, both second stage Pokemon by the way, will be getting a Mega Evolution. They could very easily just get a regular evolution, but they decided to give this majestic looking dragon and tough ass lion a Mega when there already exists a third stage majestic dragon and tough ass lion Pokemon who don't have a Mega. And if Dragalge or Pyroar turns out to be straight buns, then that's that. It can't do anything about it until Pokemon decides to add Mega Evolution above a Mega Evolution or something. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say about incomplete evolution lines being given Mega Forms. But what do you guys think? Am I spitting straight facts and that Game Freak should try and maximize each and every Pokemon to the fullest? Or do you think that Megas are just for fun and it doesn't really matter all that much? And we should just be fighting with Pokemon we enjoy? Me personally, I don't care about all of that. Make a new Mega Sceptile, I beg, and don't make it ass. I'm Pickle Jimmy. I'm Pickle Jimmy.